Yes, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. Appreciate you folks jumping in a little bit early. We haven't started the session just yet, so we're going to be kicking off promptly at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, US. So about 3 minutes from now, we'll come back on about a minute out in about 2 minutes and go through a couple of kind of pre-webinar announcements, a few things about Q&A and a few things like that. So hang tight with us, folks, and we'll be right back on. All right, I want to thank everybody for joining us for today's live webinar entitled Protecting Your Lab Data, Use LIMS Security Features. Today's presentation is brought to you by Asterix and presented by our friends at CloudLIMS. So before we go into the session, you go to the next slide, Martha. Before we get into the actual materials here from CloudLIMS, we're going to go through some couple of quick introductions of who Asterix is, why we're doing these webinars, why we're presenting to you today, et cetera. So quick company snapshot on the Asterix side of the fence. In short, Asterix is a professional services firm, and we work with a lot of different technology vendors throughout you can go back to the first slide, Martha. I'll let you know when we scoot to the next one. So we work with a lot of different types of vendors in the space, folks like CloudLIMS and otherwise. And what we're typically doing is providing a wide array of services in the life science sector. So some fast facts about the company. We were established in 1995. And while we work with lots of different vendors in this space, we do stay vendor and platform agnostic. We operate from locations in the United States and overseas, over 1,200 employees, 90% of which hold advanced science degrees. We are very much a science-based company providing science-based services. The clients that we work with, startups to Fortune 1000, again, life science sector, but also we do work in chemical, CPG, government agencies, and research institutions, generally speaking, anybody with a lab. And we go to the next slide, please. In terms of the service offerings that we bring, there's an end-to-end service offering that we like to say helps you optimize digital transformation and your performance across an entire ecosystem. This is going to include everything from strategic innovation, enterprise architecture. That's really helping companies understand what their technology stack needs to look like and what the processes and people need to be put in place to make that work over the long term, to kind of help shepherd you out of paper into a digital transformation. We help select solutions like CloudLIMS today. And from there, we can help with development and implementation of these solutions. When those solutions are put in place, we can help with computer systems validation. It's a big part of a lot of our engagements. From there, we also provide ongoing application support. This is where we are helping you maintain your technology in a remote managed service methodology. And finally, staffing. So Asterix is somewhat uniquely positioned in this world because we can not only help you select and implement these solutions, we can help staff the people to run these solutions, or we can just help you staff your lab. We do scientific-based staffing and IT-based staffing here at Asterix. So that's a little bit about us. I'll move off of who Asterix is and introduce our speaker for today. And we can go to the next slide. Martha Hernandez is joining us. She's a scientist at CloudLIMS. She's a chemist with expertise in a lot of different areas of analytical chemistry, and she's worked as an analyst at a third-party analytical laboratory where she's focused on developing and validating analytical methods for things like bioequivalent studies. Tremendous background, great speaker with a lot of industry insight and knowledge. Certainly you could read through her wealth of qualifications and expertise that she brings to bear. I'll cut it short on my side and introduce Martha, and I'm going to sit back and enjoy the presentation.
Thank you so much for the introduction. So hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. And well, I'm Martha Hernandez, and well, here I'm a scientist at CloudLIMS. And well, welcome to my talk. I'm going to talk to you about protecting your lab data. Well, use LIMS security features. So I'm going to tell you that in this presentation, we are going to see we will see the importance of the cybersecurity and the risks that are involved in a laboratory. We will also see the types of cyber attacks. And well, I will give you some measures to prevent these cyber attacks. And also I will give you a solution. I will tell you how does LIMS help with this cybersecurity issues in your laboratory. Well, let's start with a very simple question. What is cybersecurity? Well, I'm going to give you the definition, the official definition, according to the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Well, it is the art of protecting networks, devices, and data from unauthorized access or criminal use, and the practice of ensuring confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information. So this cybersecurity includes all the procedures and methodologies that are used to protect computers, servers, um, mobile devices, electronic systems, networks, and data from these malicious attacks from the hackers. So, as we know, with the rapid development of the digital age, the cybercrimes have been on the rise. So, the exchange of data over the internet and the emergence of cloud-based data stores have increased the risk of this cyber attacks. But what can we do to shield ourselves against these attacks? Well, in the laboratory, of course, it is imperative that all the labs switch from paper-based data management methods and spreadsheets to a secure, automate data management system. And well, speaking about the security in the laboratory, well, the laboratories needs to identify the existing and potential safety risks and also minimize these existing risks as laboratories store and share a considerable amount of data, and they share this information internally and externally and every day. So yeah, we know that what's cybersecurity, but we want to know now, what do hackers want to steal from a laboratory? What is important to steal from these hackers? Well, hackers, of course, target data in any cyber attack. And here it's the sensitive data, what is their target. And this is all the confidential information that is managed by a laboratory and that is related to a patient or a provider or a client that should not be revealed to a third party and that is only accessible to authorized users. So depending of the type of laboratory that you have, well, it's the information, is the sensitive data information that you have in your laboratory. Can be protect health information or personally identifiable information, also commercial information, clinical trials and study information, and of course the intellectual property. So for the persons that don't know what kind of information is this, well, the protect health information applies to the clinical laboratories. Could be clinical research or clinical diagnosis, and biobanks and hospitals and everything related to health information that can be from a patient or a donor. And this includes the past, present, or future health conditions. So here the HIPAA privacy rules provides federal protections for personal health information held by covered entities, and this gives patients an array of rights with respect to that information. So this privacy rule encompasses all the medical records and other individually identifiable health information that is used or disclosed by a covered hospital or entity lab in any form. So it could be electronically, it could be on paper or orally. So this is the protect health information that you may or may not have in your laboratory, and you have to protect from these hackers. So the personally identifiable information, well, as the name says, is any type of information that can be used to identify a person. So it can include, of course, the person's name, last name, address, identifications numbers, financial info, social security numbers, among others. So and the laboratory data must be anonymous so that it cannot be traced back to any individual in case a breach of information broke. Well, this cannot be traceable to any individual here. The next one will be the commercial information. We know the labs have sensitive information related to business partners. And this could be like suppliers, creditors, debtors. So this information is sensitive and should never be disclosed to third parties. And this includes client list or products that are purchased by clients, names of individual contacts, and all the information that can be related with the business that you do with any other part. So the next one will be the clinical trials and study information. And of course, this applies to institutions that deal with clinical trials and research institutes. So this refers to all kinds of information that is collected and is generated from clinical research and trials and every process that you do with your clinical research. And this could be, for example, the participant medical records, the found encounters or notes that you have with the participant, the test results, reports, participant diaries, for example, and specific research worksheets. So any kind of information that is generated from these clinical trials, also informed consents and any information generated here, well, it's a protect and it's a sensitive data that you must protect from any hacker. So next one will be the intellectual property. So this refers to any intellectual property created in your laboratory, and it's depending of your lab. What do you create there? It could be methods or formulations or drug models or catalyst compositions, study designs, any thing, any method that you are generated in your laboratory. Well, it's an intellectual property and it must be protected in any way. And also this includes this commercial information like sales data, business agreements, business plans, any contracts, sorry. And well, that's what intellectual property is. So we know what is cybersecurity. We know what the hackers wants to steal the data. We know what is which is the information that is sensitive that we may or may not have in our laboratory. Now, the next question will be how to protect your laboratory from these cyber attacks. So I'm going to give you some tips that you can use to protect this your laboratory from this cyber attacks, cyber hackers. So we know that the laboratory shares data with interested parties internally and externally, right? So the labs must securely share this information with the stakeholders to ensure this, of course, data security. So how to do that? Well, labs should preferably work with only those vendors that can follow these cybersecurity best practices. So that's a tip. Of course, no, not always is it's possible to do that, but you must well pick those vendors or those partners that follow this cybersecurity best practices. So if that's not possible 100% of the times, well, you can organize training sessions to the staff. You can introduce these hacker schemes or hacker tricks to your staff so they can be aware of it. You can raise the awareness of the schemes hackers routinely that are using to infiltrate labs. So, for example, you can teach your staff what spear phishing is. So this is when hackers send fraudulent emails to extract this confidential information. Or another one is the watering hole attacks. So this is when the hackers discover websites that are used by the lab staff and infect those websites with malware to collect information and credentials from the database. So I remember in the laboratory where I work, well, I have 12 years that I was in the lab in several industries in analytical labs. So I remember one or two maybe that they block all the pages of social media pages that are the target for any hacker to steal this information. Of course, we were like, oh, come on, I have this time to, relax a little bit in the meantime that I don't know, my reaction, it's going on. But they cannot allow us to access that websites in the network of the laboratory because of the hackers can steal some information. So that's a good practice that you can follow. Log all that pages that are insecure for your staff. The next one will be follow cybersecurity practices. If you were wondering what are those practices, well, there are a lot. So I'm gonna give you some of the most important of them. So the laboratory must ensure the secure remote access. And this could be with a virtual private network or the famous VPN for personal accessing laboratory instruments remotely. So sometimes you can access to your, I don't know, to your instruments from another part, from home. You want to know how is it going this test or whatever. So you have to use a VPN to access. So because it's the best way to do it and to don't allow any hacker to see your information in your lab. So another one will be identifying vulnerabilities early is critical. We know that to managing these security measures as soon as possible. The next one will be the laboratory staff should use a strong password to access data stored on computers or cloud databases. And well, they have to update it frequently. Okay, so no more password 000 or 1234. No, you have to educate your staff to make strong passwords and force them to update them frequently. So we know that some you can well you can change it and you can block the access to your staff if they don't change it in, I don't know, 1 or 2 months. So you can do that in your laboratory as well. And also your laboratory must implement two-factor authentication mechanisms to strengthen this data security. We will see this a little bit later in this presentation. I will give you an example of this. The next one could be the regular data backups. So these backups reduce the risk of losing digital data. So it's good to make a backup daily, probably in the hours that nobody is working there to avoid any issue. So that's it's a strong recommendation that I can give you. And also the data replication. You can copy the data to storage devices or cloud servers located in a different physical location. And this will allow you to recover the data if it's damaged or is lost. So it's good to have this data in another physical location, maybe in a different city, or well, to avoid any natural disaster in your city. Well, you have your data secure in another. So also the laboratories should have a system to automatically take regular backups at defined time intervals to minimize the chances of course, the data lost. And as I said, with this natural or human disasters as well. And well, the best tip that I can give you is to deploy a secure LIMS system. Okay, I'm going to talk about this a little bit. So why a LIMS? Why should if I want to protect my laboratory, why should I get a LIMS? And well, labs must deploy a laboratory information management system or LIMS with foolproof security mechanisms to safeguard your data, your values data. Okay, a LIMS can handle security in 5 different ways. The first one will be secure data servers and automatic backups. That was we were talking about. You have to have a system that make these backups automatically. Well, LIMS can help you with that. Also, secure login and identify unauthorized access. So This is really important because you don't want that any external person that is not authorized to see your information access to your system. So a LIMS helps you with that. We will see that a little bit I think it's the next slide. The next thing that a LIMS can do for you, it's role-based access. We will check that too. Another one will be Captcha and two-factor authentication. This is to prevent data loss, errors, and most important, manipulation. Cannot be happening in your lab. This is a bad reputation for your lab if there is a manipulation. And the data encryption, and could be in transmission and at rest. So we will see how LIMS helps you to protect your laboratory. So data centers and data servers are the first security shield for your LIMS. So a good LIMS vendor must ensure that all of its servers meet the following requirements. So if you are convinced at this time that LIMS is the best option to protect their cybersecurity in your laboratory, well, I'm giving you time to make a screenshot or take a picture or whatever you want to this checklist that you have to ask to your vendor it's um, if it meets these requirements to be sure that it's a good LIMS. So they have to meet ISO 27001 compliance. This is an international standard to manage information security. Okay, we know what ISO is. But this in particular details requirements for establishing an information security management system. And the aim of this ISO is to help organizations to make the information assets they hold more secure. So the ISO 27001, it's the most important for this. So your vendor must comply with this ISO. Also, must be up to date with all the security patches in place, must have a firewall and watchdogs in place, and must be monitored 24/7 for any issue that this may have. And also they have to execute penetration tests before every release. So that's are the most important things that you have to ask to your vendor if it's a good LIMS. So the next one will be secure login, audit trail, and digital signatures. All LIMS vendors provide the user's IDs and passwords, but we know that this can quickly be compromised by any hacker or any external person. So the hackers can use sniffing techniques or tricks to compromise this password, hence the need for additional security measures. So this is really happened. This is really easy to violate. You know, the first layer, the login and password. So they have programs to hack this. So you need another layer of security. So a proper LIMS offers solutions like digital signatures, like two-factor authentication, or audit trails of all the activities with date and timestamp as an added layer of protection. So I'm going to show you what the secure login and digital signature in a LIMS. So a good LIMS enforces the staff to authenticate themselves using a two-factor authentication mechanism. In this case, can be an OTP, that is a one-time password, and a password-based login for this secure this data access. So the two-factor authentication is required when the LIMS information is accessed through different devices. This includes the phones and laptops. So as I said, I adds an additional layer of security to confirm that the first layer, that are the login password, has not been compromised. And also, it locks staff accounts temporarily on account of multiple failed login attempts. So if one of your staff forget there's passwords or fail in the attempt to get in, well, it will be logging, it will be locked temporarily. So that's a good layer of security for your laboratory. And a digital signature. So a LIMS can be configured, to make these digital signatures mandatory for several activities. And this include, I don't know, the addition of test results, for example, or the deletion of samples, or any critical activity that you have in your laboratory. Well, you can make mandatory this digital signatures. So LIMS enforce the staff to authenticate key lab activities through these electronic signatures, as they are also known, and specify the reasons for such activities. So this provides an additional layer of data security and prevents any chances of unauthorized changes. So they have to specify a reason of why they are, I don't know, deleting a sample or changing any test results, so you know that they cannot be any anonymous manipulation in your data. So that's a good feature that a LIMS can have for your laboratory. And well, with a LIMS in place, the manual manipulation of data is not possible. Why? Well, because of the read-only audit trail. So a LIMS tracks all the laboratory activities, such as any changes made to documents or sample records or test results, and even the login activities of the staff. So with an audit trail, the time travel issues that you may have if you have a spreadsheets or paper, it's not possible. No. It, sometimes I remember in another lab that well, we forgot or add, something in a log, in a paper log. So well, we crossed and we added, and well, that was a terrible practice. And in the audits, well, there were a lot of non-conformities for that. So with LIMS, it cannot be possible. It's automatically. It will be the date and time stamp. So you're not going to cross anything. You're not going to change any date or any time. And that's really useful, because sometimes in audits, the external auditors can ask for an audit trail report, and you have it here automatically in your LIMS. You don't have to search anything anywhere. So the role-based access. So it is important to protect also the information from unauthorized internal access, not only the hackers. No, you have to protect also in your lab. So this requires the assignment of user roles with certain permissions only at certain levels. Only they have to see the information that they will need for doing their daily job. So what users can access will be restricted what is necessary for the function. So they don't need to know everything in their lab. They don't have to check all the sensitive data if they're not going to use it. So how do LIMS helps with this? Well, as you can see here, labs can assign rights to the staff for accessing sample and patient information based on the roles. For example, the manager have full access to view, to create, to edit, delete, to manage access permission to everything in the patient and samples model. So the manager can do everything in your lab. So it's the principal person in your laboratory, so she has to have access to everything. But the technician, no, but the lab in charge or a visitor can only view this information. So no, everyone can delete samples, for example. Only the persons that you give the access to based on their role in your laboratory, in your hierarchy. So the next one will be Captcha. This helps to confirm that the system has not been compromised by spam software designed to extract information from a website. So it is usually in the form of a simple mathematical calculation to confirm that a user is actually human. So it's the form that you um, that you uh, that you say that you're not a robot. So it's a different kind of security system, but it's really helpful for any website. And data encryption. So LIMS data must be end-to-end encrypted. So for most of you, if you don't know what encryption means, this is turning information into an unreadable version where a key is needed to decrypt the information. So in a good LIMS, the data is encrypted so that outside viewers cannot read it if they have an unauthorized access. And well, information is only decrypted through authorized access, limit to the level of permission granted. So this is really helpful for all the kind of data that I show you that must be encrypted for example, personal identified information. And it is really helpful that a LIMS helps you with this. And let me show you how a good LIMS do it. So you can see here, it's the information that can identify a participant or patient, the name, the persistent medical condition, and the email. It's encrypted, so you cannot see what information it is here if you don't have the authorized if you are not authorized to see it, if you're not going to use it, you don't want to know, you don't have to know what's the name of the participant. I don't know, 9058 is so you just need to know uh, any other data, but not the one that identified them. So this is the mass data can only be viewed by an authorized person. So in each time an authorized person views or make any changes, the activity is recorded in the audit trail. So that's really helpful because you will know who access to this sensitive data and what changes they made. And if you add the layer of the digital signature, they have to put why they do these changes or why they access to this information. So LIMS do this all for you. So in conclusion, we know that the data security should be a top priority for any organization. We saw the reasons because of the sensitive information that we manage in our labs. So it has to be top priority. You have to schedule training sessions for your staff and to acquire implement anything that can help you to increase this cybersecurity in your lab. Cybersecurity, of course, involves putting measures in place to ensure that all the digital resources in an organization are protected from unauthorized access. And well, we saw that the LIMS helps you a lot with this. And we know that reputational damage is the greatest cost of a data breach. But not only that, we have fines and we have other sanctions that um, could damage your laboratory. So thank you very much for your attention. And well, I will answer all your questions later here.
Yeah, hi Martha. Thank you so much for a great presentation. Lots of great points in there, and certainly lots of great tips and insights for folks to take away and obviously consider as part of your overall LIMS strategy and security strategy. So good stuff there. We're going to go ahead and do a couple things real quick. Number one, I'm going to stop the recording because we typically don't do the recording through the Q&A session. So we'll stop the recording.